Hi guys, it's Leigh with Still Raven Farms. Today I want to talk to you guys about how to build a homestead. So in the last podcast I talked about, can you homestead on 5 acres? And the answer is yes, you can absolutely homestead on 5 acres. You can homestead on 1/4 of an acre or on your patio, because homesteading is a spirit. Okay. It is not, you have to have this, you got to do that, you got to have animals, you got to have a garden, you got to have this. That's not what homesteading is. What homesteading is this desire. It's a spirit of self-reliance. Okay. It is, and everybody's different. Okay. So for me, I may want a cow, but I'm probably not going to get a cow anytime within the next 5 years. It's just not what's going to end up happening. Welcome to my homestead. The cat just shot past and got the dog excited. Blue, go lay down, baby. Blue, go. I swear to God, this dog's going to drive me crazy. So anyways, homesteading is all about you and your partner, if you have one, or your property. It is not about keeping up with the Joneses. It is not about, I got to have a tractor, I got to have this, I got to have that. But so anyways, getting into the nitty-gritty of how to build a homestead. So the first thing that you're going to do to build your homestead, every single time, any single way, it doesn't matter if you're looking at purchasing 1 million acres or you're just, I say, quote, just, you're purchasing your house in a subdivision, right? It doesn't matter what you're doing, as long as the very first step is you are outlining your goals for that homestead. One of the very first things that Jared and I did when we settled on the property and we decided this is what we're doing, this is where we're going, this is it. The very first thing that him and I did was we sat down and decided what we wanted out of our homestead, right? What does it look like? And so we sat there and we dreamed and dreamed and dreamed for, honestly, close to 6 months. Now, we had already bought the property and we were living on the property while we were dreaming, but I tell people this all the time when they're, talking about buying property. The very first thing that you do is plan. And the second thing that you're going to do is you're going to dream. You're going to dream. You're going to sit on that property for the first season. And I say the first season because there's no telling when you bought that property. There's no telling what was already going on that property before you got there. But I always tell people, before you do anything big, sit on it for a season. That could be, an actual season, like you bought the house in fall and now you're going to start doing things in winter. Or it could be a season is in an actual time frame of, I'm going to sit here for 6 months. I'm going to sit here for a year. I'm going to see what I'm going to let this property show me what it needs, wants, does, so on. And I always recommend that, because if you buy a piece of land that you know nothing about, other than somebody else lived there before you, right? Or maybe somebody didn't live there. Who knows? But if the very first thing that you know about that property is it's got 5 acres or 8 acres or whatever, and you know nothing else, sit on it. Because if you start working that land before you really have a good idea of what that land can do, you're going to start making mistakes, and they're going to be big mistakes, and they're going to be possibly devastating. And so maybe let's not do that. So to give you a prime example, we bought our property in May of 21, and we sat on it, relatively speaking, for just about 9 months until we put our first garden in. It was almost not quite a year. And the reason that we did that, and I could have absolutely put in a late summer garden. I could have absolutely put in a fall garden. I could have absolutely have done a ton of things. But I wanted to sit on the property just long enough for it to show me what it can do. I wanted to see where the water drained. And torrential, the very first month that we were here, we got more rain. Now, we live in one of the rainiest areas in Georgia that exists. And so because of our elevation, we get a ton of rain. And had we done what we wanted to do, we would have put the garden in a really bad spot, because that's where all the water drains to. And that's not a great thing for plants like peppers that don't require a lot of water. And it's actually pretty bad for things like, cucumbers or melons or even tomatoes that are very watery in nature, because then they're going to get even more watery because there's a ton of water, and they're not going to be very flavorful. So I'm really glad that we waited. Another thing, when we first got here, our original plan for the space in between the driveways was to leave it. Like, we didn't really have any plans for it. And I'm really glad we left it, because we installed our kitchen garden early in 2023. And it is my favorite spot on the property. Second probably only to the goat pens. I friggin' love sitting in the summer in my kitchen garden, because of how the sun comes over the property. There's a lot of shade in there in the sweltering afternoon. So I have a place where I can go hang out in my garden and not die of heat stroke. Sold, right? So sit on your property for just long enough for it to tell you what it can do. Don't think that just because you're human and you have higher reasoning, you know better than Mother Nature. You don't. I promise you, that is what is wrong with our food system today. Is, Big Ag got involved and said, well, I can do it better. And they haven't at all. In fact, they've made it quite a bit worse. So that being said, really sit down, plan, just list out, and I call it dreaming. Actually, to be honest with you, I call it scheming, where I sit down and I just brain dump all of the things that I want to do, right? That can look like any businesses that I want to start. It can look like, the garden. We'll keep going with the garden. All the varieties that I want to plant, all the places that I want to put plants, all of that information, I just dump it and I plan. I call it planning. It's actually scheming, where all the things that I want to do, and I put it down on paper. And then what I do is I kind of I go through and I highlight the different things that are actually feasible. What are the things obviously I cannot travel to Mars. That's not going to happen. That's not feasible. So what can I do? And I start, making my list of, what do I want to do? How do I want to do it? What are the plans? What are the goals? What are the steps? And that is how you build your homestead. That is step one of building your homestead. You don't even have to have property to start dreaming and scheming and setting goals and plans, right? You don't even have to. But you can start playing with the ideas that you have. Do you want to raise chickens? Do you want to raise goats? Do you want to raise cattle? All of those things really will help you build your homestead. Because and I put it in one of my blog posts, if your goal, and it's a hard, fast line that this is what you're going to do, is you're going to heat with firewood. And you're only going to use trees that are harvested from your property. And then you turn around and purchase a property that has not a single fucking tree on it. Guess what's going to happen? You're never going to hit that goal. Or at least not in your lifetime. Your kids may hit that goal, but you will not. And so start thinking about all the things that you want this property to do and be and have and all this stuff. And then start being a little bit more realistic, right? I may want to go to Mars, but it's probably not going to happen in my lifetime. And I have to be okay with that, right? So the next step of building your homestead is look at all of the things, and this is a personal thing. I think it's a very smart thing. It's what we did. Look at, before you make any purchases, before you do anything, look at all the things that you can do manually. So what does that mean, doing it manually? So if I had given in to my initial urges and what I thought we needed, we would be in a world of hurt. I wanted to get Jared's shop built and, put in and all of that stuff. I wanted to have this big barn and all. I wanted a huge barn. I wanted side-by-sides. I wanted huge gardens and a tiller and a this and a this and a this and a this and all this stuff. Okay? Because I thought that's what you needed to have to be a homesteader, to be a farmer, to do the things. And you know what I found out? You don't need that stuff. In fact, a lot of the times it does more harm than good. Case in point, the tractor. If we had bought the tractor when we bought this property, one, we'd still be paying on it, and that doesn't fit into our financial goals. Two, we would have practiced something that now that I know better is fundamentally wrong with our culture and society when in agriculture, right? Huge tilling of land is not good for sorry about that. The cat had to go outside, and then the other cat decided to come in, and then the dog started, going nuts. Anyways, Big Ag has taught us that tilling massive swaths of land constantly does not help the land, right? And if we had bought the tractor, what we would have done is we would have tilled the land to death, and we would have kept doing it because we didn't know any better. But because we didn't want to go into more debt, because we didn't want more debt, because we didn't want more payments, because we didn't want to really deal with the hassle of having to get the financing and the this and the this and this. No. I don't know which one of us talked the other one into not getting the tractor, but whoever that was a friggin' genius. Okay, I have no idea who it was. If Jared wants to take the honor of that, he's a fucking genius. But anyways, my point is that because we did not purchase a tractor and because we did not purchase a tiller, what we learned was how to do things manually. And yes, it is backbreaking. And yes, it's hard and it's tiring. And there are days where, man, I just want to say, let's get the fucking tractor. But I am so glad that we didn't, because by not getting the tractor, by not dealing with that, I'm not real sure how we're recording something, because literally nothing is plugged into my computer, and I just realized that, but it's working, and so I'm going to keep going with it. I don't understand technology. I never have. So anyways, learning how to do things manually, what that has the cause and effect, right? What has happened is we learned how strong we are without a tractor. We have learned that we can move things on our own without having to have all this stuff. We can cut down trees and move the huge rounds to heat for firewood. We can do all of that stuff on our own. We do not have to have all this big equipment. Now, would it make it easier? Yes. Would it make it less time consuming? Absolutely. But there is this really amazing kind of primal thing that occurs when you do things manually. And if we're trying to get back to the basics, if we're trying to get back to the slow lane, if we're trying to do things the way that maybe nature intended, or that our ancestors did it, or even our grandparents did it, they didn't have a tractor. Well, some of them did, but some of them didn't. They were too poor to have a tractor. And so we have learned over the last 2-3 years how to do things manually. And because of that, we have gained all this knowledge and information on how to do things. Now, we do still need the barn. We have learned that the barn, the current goat barn, is 12 by 8, I think is what it is. And we have 9 permanent does, and then we have, their babies or whatever. And then we have 2, I say permanent, they're not permanent. If we can't sell them, they go in the freezer. We have the bucks, right? And what that means is when I have, so who did it this year? This year, Bailey gave birth to triplets. And so we put her in the milking parlor. And that's fine. That's what it's for. And then a couple of days later, Bella gave us technically twins. One of them died. And so we had to pull, and now it's January. It's cold. And so we had to pull Bailey out of the milking area with her triplets and put them on the big side of the barn and hope that they stayed warm so that Bella could bond with her baby in the milking area. And so what we found is that barn is not big enough to do what we are currently doing with it. So when mamas have babies, what we do is we put the mama and the baby or babies in the milking area for them to bond for 2 or 3 days. Give mama a chance to rest and recoup and let the babies, figure out who mom is and start nursing and all of that stuff. We do not let them out of the barn for 2 or 3 days. Bella, usually we let her out of the barn after day 1 because she bonds with her babies immediately and we're good to go. But the other ones are not. They kind of got to figure it out. And now that they've had a couple of babies, they're okay. So because of that, anyways, we figured out that we need a better system for mamas and babies. And what we're going to do is, and we also need to move the barn because we didn't know when we built the barn that we built it literally in a water runoff area. So the water, when it rains really hard, goes straight into the barn. So we've got to move it up to higher ground. And it was Jared's first ever building that he ever built. So while it is amazing, there are some changes that need to be made. And so that's the plan actually for 2024, late season 2024, as long as we don't have any issues. Now we do have little shacks all around the property that if we need to, we can put the mama and the babies in and put some bedding in there and all that. And it's a pretty decent sized shack. And we have doors on them to keep them safe so that the babies don't wander off. But again, it kind of goes back to that idea of you don't have to purchase the big red barn. You may not need the big red barn. You may not need to purchase the big, huge chicken coop. You may not need the tractor or the side-by-side or the four-wheelers or the whatever. You may not need all of that stuff, but you don't know that you don't need it because you've not been in this life, right? If this is your first foray into building a homestead, you may think, well, that homesteader on YouTube has all of these things and that one has all of these things and they can't live without that. But you don't know what the capabilities of your property is. You may not need a tractor. Or your philosophies change, like us, and you don't need a tiller. You don't need the tractor. You don't need this. You don't need that. You don't need any of that because you have, 2 growing boys that like to pick things up and put them down because they have all this testosterone surging through them. And now you can put them to work. And that's what I do, right? I've got 2 boys that want to earn money. Go fill those garden beds, boys. See ya. And that's okay. And so learning how to do things manually is not a bad thing. We've grown up in a society where convenience is at our fingertips. And I'm I love convenience. I don't want to go out to get dinner. DoorDash. Love it. It's significantly more expensive to do it that way, but I now have dinner that I didn't have to, change out of my sweatpants. Sold. I didn't have to cook it. I didn't have to make it. I didn't have to plan it. Okay, I'll take it. And so, again, keeping all of that in mind, understand that learning how to make things from scratch, whether that's for food, learning how to build a raised bed, learning how to build a barn, learning how to build a greenhouse, learning how to do these things is so much more important than having all the gizmos and gadgets and all the things, right? Having the materialistic things. And materialism isn't bad. Your life is significantly easier with a cell phone in your pocket. Because then you can pull up YouTube and learn how to butcher a chicken while the carcass is hanging in the air. Those things are useful. Don't shun technology. But also don't pay for conveniences that you don't even know you need. So those are the two big ones, right? Plan, dream, scheme, figure out what you want out of your property. Then hold off on any major purchases until you absolutely 100% know that that is what you need or want. And then 3, honestly, and I say this every single time I talk about gardens or livestock, make sure you put your gardens in before you get your livestock. Please, 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 please. I didn't do that. Most homesteaders that I know don't do that. However, my life would be significantly easier if I had said, you know what, I'm going to install pasture before I get animals. I'm going to learn how to grow things that these animals can eat so I'm not reliant on the feed store. All of these things are super important that I didn't do. I didn't listen. And you're not going to listen either. Like, if we're being honest, you're not going to listen because you're going to get on your homestead and you're going to go, I want chickens. And you're going to get chickens. And then you're going to get goats and ducks and geese and this and that. And you're going to get all these animals. And then you're going to sit there and go, my feed bill is $1,200 a month. What do I do? So this is your warning that you're not going to heed. And that's totally cool because I wouldn't either. I wouldn't do it either. But if I had any piece of advice to give anybody that's looking to homestead, just getting into homesteading, or anything where you're just at the start of your journey, my suggestion is to set goals, make a plan, get property if you can, or if you've already got property, like figure that out, realistic expectations of what you can do, learn how to do things manually, and then start bringing in tools that are going to make your life easier. Those are my suggestions. Take it for what you will. It's probably not what you want to hear, but it is my recommendation as somebody who went from a city kid to a homesteader and has been homesteading for 3 years, just about now. These are the things that I would do a little differently. So I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll talk to you guys later.